So like I said, I make lots of pots that start at the wheel, and that's important to me that they start at the wheel, meaning that rather than just hand building everything from start to finish, my inclination is to, I like the liveliness and the kind of sensuality that throwing puts into the clay. And then I like to hand build with that. Because there's been times I've thought to myself, maybe you should just hand build everything, start to finish, rather than throw. But really I'm not at this point willing or interested in giving up.
Perhaps Nick, I wanted to ask you a little about your glazing. I know you might want to talk about that later, but you know, it's wax resist. Are you doing? Is your base glaze a glaze, or is it soda fired, or is that a Shino glaze, or? I'm curious on like, because it's kind of it looks you know, the orangeness on the, at least on the image that you have on the post.
Yeah. No, and it's true. Even lots of potters who come into the studio and are seeing the work, they're assuming I'm doing some kind of atmospheric firing. Yeah, maybe we should at least get the poster. I didn't bring any pots. Yeah, we want to take a quick second. I'll do a real quick thing about glazing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How much clay did you use on the plate?
Oh, thanks. So typically when I'm throwing plates, I'm using almost 5 pounds. That gets me to 12, a little over 12 and a half inches. My clay body shrinks to about 11 or 10 3/4, something like that. Yeah, so we can do a quick pause. I won't get too lost in this, I don't think. Yeah. So just to keep, to point to this, I should have brought a pot or two. I'm sorry I didn't do that. Yeah, what I'm doing is everything is dipped, so everything's dipped in a bucket. This rust red is a Shino glaze on very thin, and we won't get too much into what that is. People that are more interested in that we can talk about that later. So that I thin that way down. Shinos are typically delicious and when they're thick. I'm using it really thin. That's this rust red, and then everything else about this pot would be one glaze. So what I'm doing is kind of stylized figures that are on there. You know, a lot of folks maybe don't see the figures, but there's kind of a stylized figure in there. What I'll do is, with the lightest of pencil touch, outline those. And I really do mean light pencil touch, because one of the things that you can actually use to your advantage with the Shino glaze is you can make marks into it and they'll stay, so the Shinos don't flux very much. So with lightest, and I don't want that pencil mark to show, so with lightest I'll just sort of outline this, wax away from the figures, and then this pot would typically get dipped. If it was wide enough to be this wide, it could get dipped into a bucket like this. And then the thing that I'm always after is, I don't want the, I'm interested in having the glaze be directional. By that I mean you can see that you can see how it moves across the surface of a pot, and have it be thin to thick. Like if all I'm getting is a thick glaze, I'm not that interested. If all I'm getting is thin glaze, I'm not that interested in. So I'm really interested in having it be, like with this dinner plate. It would go into a bucket like this, and it might be that when I put it into the bucket, I might count to 20 as I brought it out, sometimes even longer, so that it's thin up here where it's in the bucket the least amount of time, and thick down here. And it's that, then you also, in a lot of pieces, you can watch the glaze shed, so it runs off the plate, and that's interesting. So I'm trying to do this in a concise way without getting too lost in, without a pot to show. But,
And I just find it interesting. I know that you did some figures, but you see a lot in that. There's a positive, negative that you're seeing, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, and the nicest time for me is if somebody comes in the studio and I'm talking about the figures, and they say what figures. That's the best for me, because it means that the negative and positive space, it's all interesting. I can't help to see the figures because I'm making them. Also, just as another aside, I don't want to get too lost into talking, but like with those figures, like I said, I don't come with any drawing training, so I have to make my lack of ability work to my advantage. And so I've been drawing those figures. I'm very right-handed, so I've been drawing those figures with my right hand, and I've noticed over the last couple of years, my right hand has gotten too knowledgeable. So what I started doing a couple of years ago is trying to draw those figures with my left hand and hold like if this was the pencil, hold the pencil way out here. So I don't have much control of it, because I don't want the figures to be polished and be unsophisticated and as much as anything mark making.
So what's going to happen when you get a little ambidextrous and you
I guess I see.
Maybe your foot.
My feet would come next. Yeah, there won't be any DVDs of that kind of drawing.
What glaze is the black then?
Yeah, it's sort of a blue-black glaze. So if it's thick, it's a real deep. It's a nice. Not a sky blue, but sort of it's a really solid earth blue. Thin, it's black. And so what I'm hoping is to get both of that on my picture. Some of this will show up better for those folks that can come to the slide thing tonight and be able to talk more about it. And I'm also happy, and I didn't get a chance to, I remembered this and then forgot, which is, if anybody's interested in the glazes, I'm happy to send you a glaze sheet, to email you the glaze sheet. So I'm very fine with doing that. Yeah, I'm not proprietary about the glazes. Yeah, I'm pretty pleased, pretty much pleased with the glazing. Although I do have this kind of, I don't know, not prejudice, but observation, which is I just feel like you put pots in an atmospheric kiln, and they just always come out beautiful. And I know that's way overstating it, and it also takes the responsibility out of how you might fire to get those pots, that look on the pots. But it almost always feels like it, in some fashion, at least you start with that atmospheric glazing, it starts being complementary, and then you have to figure out how to make that more so. But with a lot of the pots I make, and the dipping, I feel like oftentimes I just don't get that glaze on the pot the way I would like to. I feel like I make a lot of pots that ought to be, I'm not that keen on wood firing, but ought to be salt soda fired. It's just where to find the time. So one of the things about pots that I started doing a few years ago is I started enjoying stretching a lot of pots, which I'll do a little bit with this. One of the things that I found out quickly is you can take your rib and get rid of all of these marks out here and have a nice surface to decorate on or keep as a nice clean surface. But as soon as you start to take the pots and stretch the pots, all of those marks that are inside the wall, those start showing up. So I had to start doing just have that rib right here. So because these get stretched and those throwing marks in the interior show up, I started having something like this, which is putting pressure on the inside and the outside and really making sure that those marks that are burying the walls also disappear. And another thing I started to do a couple of years ago with pots, it had to do with making some pots, liking the pots, but something being wrong with the pots too. And when I was trying to figure out what was it that was missing from the pot, I felt like I came to the rim, and for the kind of pot, like maybe that pot that got passed around, so that pot that got passed around has a slightly hollow rim to it. This pot will make it have a more hollow rim. But just there was something about in that case with that pot having that just taper and then disappear without having some definition at the rim. There was something wrong about that, and other ways I was trying to solve that didn't seem right in terms of just thickening the rim. So I thought maybe because there felt like with some of those pots, when I'm pushing those pots from the inside out and stretching them, it felt like there was a kind of, because the clay stretched and opened a little bit, there was a kind of inhalation. I thought, well, maybe the rim needs to have that sort of inhalation too, meaning be hollow. So that had me wondering how to make a hollow rim, and that's what I'll do with this pot. Does anybody making hollow rims? You say not yet? Well, the reason I was asking is what I found early on with if I just took that rim and did the equivalent of like collaring it or just pushing it in, it oftentimes would ruffle. So I found that as I'm pushing this rim in, I haven't really left much extra clay in here at all. But as I'm pushing this rim in, I'm actually putting pressure on the clay, not just simply pushing the clay in. I'm putting pressure on the clay, which means that in a sort of minuscule way, you're throwing the clay, and then that keeps it from ruffling. At least that's what I found. The reason I was asking if anybody else was making hollow rims is I asked that at one workshop, and there was a person or two who was making hollow rims, but they didn't seem to be running into the problem that I was running into. So,
I've tried it, but it ruffled, so.
you say it ruffled?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, well, and I was running into the same thing. So, like I said, for me, what I found that was helpful was to actually move a little clay. Actually throw a little clay. You don't have to really leave yourself extra clay, but a little bit of pressure seemed to take that ruffling away from me.
Excuse me.
Yeah, I was talking a little bit with Brian yesterday when I started to make hollow rims. First on just a pot like this, and then in the studio it can be like you can be like a kid with a new toy. And then you got this hollow rim, it looks great, then you just start wanting to put it on everything. on pots that you should not be putting it on.
Right.
But it's hard to help yourself at first. And that's mostly what I like about this hollow rim is to make this rim hollow and then push this rib mark into it. I think gives you a really beautiful, it gives me a really beautiful line, a line that I really like. Like, if I had left this solid, it's almost like everything about this would still look the same, but when I push this rib mark into it, because there's a hollow interior, I think it makes this mark, gives it more pizzazz or has more vitality or something.